Okay. I think the last time I gave a shir was in January sometime, right? And obviously a lot has happened. So again, I wanted to give a shir because a lot has happened since then. And before I left, I was involved in explaining a lot of the American political situation in terms of hashkafa, which I think is really very important. So since the last time I gave a shir was sometime in the middle of January, I would like to add certain ideas which I think are very important. Today actually ends the 100 days of Donald Trump's administration. I don't know if you know that. It's 100 days, and everybody's judging him and so on and so forth, So it's really in many ways very appropriate to look at what he's doing and how does it conform or align with the hashkafa of the end. Because that's really what I explained a great deal about in the 15 videos that I gave. By the way, I made a summary, I don't know if anybody saw it. I made a summary of all 15 videos, 25 hours. You saw it?
No, summary?
Oh yeah, in February, yeah. Because the 15 videos are 25 hours. So I made a summary of that in 2 parts. It's in a website called yiboneh.com. I didn't load it on my website yet. But it's on a website called yiboneh.com, Y-I-B-O-N-E-H. It's part 1, part 2. You'd look in it and look at the archives. You see 21st century, my name. So both parts are about 4.5 hours. A lot better than 25. So if you want to see that before I load it to my own website, you would see it. So that was the last thing I did. What was that?
Y-O-B-N-E-H?
Y-I-B-O-N-E-H, yiboneh.com. And you can look at ideas, so you can actually see a summary of it, Anyway. Officially, really, he's done very good, I think. He has already done 25 or 24 executive orders. In many, he's overturned an enormous amount of stuff that Obama did. So that's really very good, in terms of what he's done and so on. But I'm going to title this year the second mistake or error of Donald Trump, because he's making a fundamental mistake. And not only that, but I think he's being punished. So that's really why I want to give the shir. Maybe somebody will look at it and say, wait a minute, maybe he's got a point, But he's making a fundamental mistake, and he's already being punished for that. And I don't know if people realize that. I doubt if he realized that. But it's something that he really should begin to understand certain ideas that it's coming because of his inability or his negligence, really, to carry out really what I think he has to carry out, which I went on into the whole 15 videos. He's making a fundamental mistake. The mistake that he makes is that he thinks he's an incredible negotiator. And he wrote the book called The Art of the Deal. And as far as he's concerned, he's the king of negotiations. And in a certain sense, obviously, he's right. He has become a very wealthy man. Obviously, he knows how to negotiate. To somehow convince and influence another person to come to his side, would that be a complete influence or a compromise, whatever it is. But he clearly has, skills at this particular type of ability and so on. But the mistake that he makes is that there is no such thing as a negotiator. There's a pasuk in Tehillim. It's in, I think, Kufchav Zion, 127. It's part of the Shir Malas. It's a very profound statement that it says, and I think the one who says it is Shlomo Melech. Shlomo, it's King Solomon says this, Very profound idea, and that's his mistake. It says, if God does not build a building, then the builders toil in vain. That's what it says. Then it says, if God does not watch a city, then the watchmen who watch it diligently, they also watch in vain. What does that mean? People tend to make a tremendous mistake. They think that they are responsible for what happens, you see, and that it is their skills, abilities that determine. That's a tremendous mistake. What that pasuk in Tehillim says is that if the Baruch Shem doesn't want something to happen, it won't happen. No matter what you do, it simply will not happen. That's a very important idea. But it's not only that. If the Baruch Shem doesn't want it to happen, if God doesn't want it to happen, it won't happen. Okay? So it doesn't, like it said, if God doesn't want to build a building, then the builders build in vain. It doesn't make a difference what they want to do. Nothing's going to work, you see. But it's more than that the Baruch Shem has to give you even the idea to build. It's not only that if he doesn't want to do it, it's not going to happen, right? You're not even going to want to do it unless he plants the idea in your mind. We don't realize how all-encompassing the Ribbono Shel Olam is in our lives. We absolutely don't. That everything, not only, like I said, not only if he's not in agreement with what you want to do, and all of a sudden you had the idea and he's not in agreement, it's not going to happen. I don't care if you have the entire world behind you and you're worth trillions of dollars, it's irrelevant. But the second idea is that you need his idea even to know what to do. The Ribbono Shel Olam plants constantly thoughts and ideas about what you think you want to do, what you think you originate, which you don't. So it's much worse. The control of the Ribbono Shel Olam, the control of God, is absolute, and it's almost total. If not for the small area called free will, bechira, free will, which he has implanted in a person's mind, that free will, most people don't realize, only exists in one thing: the decision. But the idea is not necessarily yours. You see, in other words, what do you decide, yes or no, to go this way or to go that way? That is the only thing you can decide without input by the Ribbono Shel Olam. But all the ideas that you have, you see, the results of what you do, it's not yours. We don't realize that. We don't realize how weak, how impotent we really are in terms of living. I want to tell you something. If the Ribbono Shel Olam didn't will us to live into the next nanosecond, that's almost an instant in time, we couldn't exist. So if you cannot even exist by your own in the next nanosecond, you're going to come up with ideas on what to invest in Wall Street? Of course not. The Ribbono Shel Olam puts it all in the mind. And the same idea. Donald Trump's ability to negotiate has nothing to do with him. His wealth, his know-how, his talents is all from God. His decision is, does he want to engage in that which the Ribbono Shel Olam just put in his mind? Of course. You see. So that's a fundamental flaw in his thinking. As a result of the fact that he thinks that, he's an incredible negotiator, what's he going to do? Well, what's he going to try to do now is negotiate the peace between Israel and the Arabs. That's what he thinks he can do. In a certain sense, it's almost like a real estate deal, He's going to get the Israel and the Arabs to compromise on real estate, property, right? Land. That's what land for peace is. Isn't that real estate? But like I say, it's not going to happen because he doesn't understand what's involved in this type of thinking, you see. Now, maybe he can negotiate a ceasefire, maybe in a truce, maybe even a truce. But he cannot negotiate a peace, as you will see why. Because that concept of a peace between Israel and the Arabs, which is really between Yishmael and the Jewish nation, is dependent on the Messianic era. It's dependent on the Geula itself. Because you have to understand that. And this is the mistake that they all make. In any case, why is this a mistake? Well, one of the problems is that it's not about negotiations. You cannot negotiate a deal like this. That's his mistake. Negotiations involve what? What's the fundamental idea of negotiations? That A wants to negotiate, and B, the other side wants to negotiate. Obviously, they both have to agree that they want to sit down and negotiate. You see? Okay, each one is going to try to take his own position. So then each one is going to try to show, how they both can gain by coming in the middle, so to speak. But fundamentally, you have to have two like-minded, equal-minded people that want to sit down and negotiate and come to some type of terms. If one side doesn't want to negotiate, what does it mean to negotiate? What are you going to do? You know what they say? You can drag a horse to the water, but you can't make him drink. Even if you drag the one side, so what? And this is a fundamental flaw. The concept or the conflict between the Jews and the Arabs is not negotiable. Why? Because they lack the mindset of one of the parties to negotiate. That's simple. You see? So what in the world are you doing trying to negotiate? It's a very simple concept when you think about that. But the problem with Donald Trump is that he thinks, since he has been very successful, that he will be able to negotiate. And that's the mistake that he makes. It's not negotiable. Why? Why is this not negotiable? First of all, the fundamental reason why it cannot be negotiated is because Islam as a religion is against it. Islam believes that any lands which were captured by the Arabs is holy to them, and it must be either maintained by them or recaptured. So then how in the world can they give land to Israel or recognize the state of Israel? It is impossible according to Islam. And these people are Islamic. They believe in Islam, you see. So therefore, theologically, it is impossible, you see. So that automatically shuts out shuts out the entire deal. The second thing is that if Abbas does negotiate, he will be assassinated the next day. And that's what Arafat once said. They once mentioned to Arafat, well, why don't you, the one guy wants to give you everything. Rabin and all that, he wants to give you everything. Why don't you negotiate? So he says, what are you, out of your mind? If I sit down and agree to recognize Israel, and I agree to swap lands or whatever, he's dead. He's a dead man the next day. So how could you possibly do it? So that's the second reason why this cannot be negotiated. Because one side fears for his life, if he sits down. A third idea, which is probably worse, because if they do negotiate and reach a conclusion, then that will be recognized as international law. Each side recognizes that they reach an agreement and it becomes law. And you can't look at, and this is not in any way a laughing matter. Once it's international law, if the Arabs violate that, then Israel, according to international law, has the right to destroy any Arab country, because it's, hey, you recognize this, you know what I'm saying? How do you do this? So they can never allow this agreement to be enshrined in international law in terms of the United Nations or any country. In other words, they're locking themselves in, which they cannot do. So that's impossible. And that's a very important idea. So that's the third reason why. A fourth reason is Abbas is not president. He hasn't been president in 2006. So who in the world are they negotiating with? He is an illegal president of the Arab lands. So what kind of legality does his agreement have? You see. The third thing is the Arabs themselves can't stand the guy. He's hated in Ramallah. So who in the world is negotiating? Another idea, okay? Even if he negotiated, right? He's only one man, right? Hamas will disagree, so will Hezbollah, so will Iran, so will Al-Qaeda, so will ISIS. They'll all disagree, and they'll laugh at the entire agreement. So who's he making a deal with? An 82-year-old man? I think he's 82. An 82-year-old man that's basically in control of almost nothing? The whole thing is a joke, you see. So therefore, what in the world are they talking about when they talk about a two-state solution, you see. Not only that, but Abbas is a terrorist. Whoever thought he's a moderate guy? He's fundamentally a terrorist. You know, he denied the Holocaust in his thesis. But it's more than that, you know. They praise and they grant victory to all the terrorists that kill Jews. They celebrate it. They name streets after these guys. So then, what are we talking about? I'm not even, and that's besides that. So he's a terrorist. Fatah isn't a moderate organization. It is a terrorist organization. And not only that, their textbooks are filled with incitement against Israel. So what he's doing is he's teaching his entire next generation to hate Israel. So not only can't he negotiate, even they can't negotiate because they hate Israel. All the kids. I mean, look what we're dealing with here, you see. Not only that, but it's known that Islam, and that's the deal with Muhammad, what he did is he felt that it is proper to deceive somebody and in the end you can kill them. In other words, we're not looking here about, you know, the means to the end. That the means to the end can be deceitful as long as we get the end by destroying the people that don't accept Islam. So the whole concept of a peace deal is nothing more than war by political means. It's really what it is. So how can anybody fall for this? You see. So that's another reason why the whole thing makes no sense. More than that, who is the greatest enemy of the Arabs? The Arabs. We have no idea of how much Arafat stole from the Arabs. I mean, it was reportedly worth $2 billion, right? What do you think he did? You think he took a teaching job? And that's how he's worth $2 billion? The money's, and it's astounding to watch European, how fools they are. You give money to these guys, it doesn't go to the government or the Arab people. It goes all to the guys who are in charge. These are the guys, especially with Hamas and so on. So what does it mean that you want to put them in charge of a two-state solution? All they'll do is take all the money and all the economic, aid. They'll just take it for themselves. So why are you even talking to these people? And besides that, there is absolutely no legitimacy to their claim. Anybody who reads the Torah, biblical, it's all about Eretz Yisrael. Yerushalayim is mentioned in Tanakh over 600 times. It's not mentioned once in the Quran. Not only that, we have the famous first Rashi, right? Where Rashi says, why does the Torah begin with that Hashem created the world? Why doesn't it begin with HaChodesh Hazeh Lochem, that this month shall be to you for the first month, a mitzvah, you know, in Parshas Bo? Why do we begin with the whole Chumash in famous Rashi? Because if the nations of the world say, hey, what are you doing with Israel? It's our country, you know, and you stole it from us. So the Jews will say, excuse me, it's not yours, it's God's. And he decides who he gives it to. It's amazing, that first Rashi anticipates, right, the whole problem of the 21st century of Israel. And goes actually for into the 20th century. It's amazing how that first Rashi says exactly what will happen in the end of time. You see. But besides that, it's biblical. The whole Tanakh is filled with the fact that the Hashem says, I give you the land. And they know that. So you are violating the commandment of God, of the Hashem, when you allow the Arabs to have anything of Israel. It's all. And not only that, but the Torah spells out the exact borders, you know, of Israel, so they can't say, well, we didn't know that the borders were. So Israel, the Jews, have biblical rights. Then there's historical rights. Everybody knows that Israel belongs to the Jews. It's even in the New Testament. I hate to bring that as a proof, but even in the New Testament, even the Christians admit that the Jews have Israel because their guy, right, he went and turned over the tables of the money changers, whatever he did. It was in the temple. They say themselves, it's the temple. So Islam is against even Christianity, you see, that recognize, of course it's Israel's. Who are you playing around with? It's astounding. So if it's historically Israel for thousands of years, they have historical rights. How do you take it away from them? You see. And another idea, legally, because the League of Nations, which was the one who gave it to them, was signed, said that Israel has, that the Jewish people have Israel, and they formalized it not only with the Balfour Declaration, which was an English document statement, but there was a conference in 1923, it's called the San Remo Conference. They legally said that Israel belongs to the Jews, including Jordan, you see. So legally, and the UN adapted all the resolutions of the League of Nations. So we're talking legal here, you see. So if you put all of these things together, can you please tell me how anybody can negotiate with the Arabs when you hear all of these ideas? It's insane. But it's more than insane. It is completely dishonest, you see. It's an incredibly dishonest position. And they will be held in judgment. But I'm throwing out these ideas, I guarantee you. This is what the Muslim is going to tell them. What are they going to say? There is nothing to say. They will be severely punished because all of these ideas indicate that they're all frauds. More than that, they're all evil. Because everybody knows, which is the very fundamental idea, that the Arabs want to destroy the Jews. Everybody knows that. Hamas even has it in their constitution. So then who are you playing around with? All you will succeed is weakening Israel and allowing them to be destroyed. How could you do that? And the answer is because that's the new modern form of anti-Semitism. The new modern form of anti-Semitism is anti-Israel. It's because it's no longer appropriate to be an anti-Semite. Doesn't pass. You can't do that, right? It's not ethical, it's not moral. But you can be anti-Israel, which really means you're anti-Semite, you see. So therefore, how do you weaken when you know that the Arabs, if they were ever had a two-state solution, would destroy the Jews? How do you do that? When you know this, you see. So this is one thing we recognize, which is a very important idea. You see, how can this man Trump do what he's doing? Not only that, Trump said, that he always keeps his promises. He's made that declaration several times. He already broke 3, you see, and they're all related to Israel. The first promise he broke, Jerusalem, you said you'd make it the capital. And now you're telling everybody you're going to look into it? Excuse me, look into what? How you can break your promise? What's that supposed to mean, look into it? You said that was your campaign promise. And you said you never break a promise. You said you'd make the capital of Israel, Jerusalem. What happened? What's the excuse? That's the first thing he said. The second thing he said, right, is that he was okay with the settlements. And now he's telling everybody, you got to put them on hold. What are you doing? You said that it was okay, that Israel can build settlements. In fact, everybody in Israel understood that to be true. And now you're stopping them from building settlements? How do you do that? And not only that, but you also said that, hey, it's up to them. Whatever deal they work out is fine. You see? That's it. Let them work out together, the deal. So then how can you intervene in trying to put a deal together? Because we know what's going to happen. What always happens is what? Is that Israel is pressured to give up everything. But the whole concept, how can you allow the Arabs to have a two-state solution? They have nothing in Israel, as I pointed out previously. The whole thing is a violation of the Torah and God's will. So how do you even do that? You see. So Trump has got big problems. He has big problems. Where do you see that? Okay, now you have to take a look at what's happening in the world. And you have to see what's happening. It's called midah keneged midah, measure for measure. You see, and obviously neither Trump or his administration realizes what's going on. But I'm going to tell you what's going on. One, Europe. Europe is terrible to Israel. We know that. It's incredible. Well, Europe, they give money to Arabs all over the place, and they're just terrible to the state of Israel. You can't even build in the territories, right? Because then they're gonna what do you call boycott you if you build in the territories. I mean, it's really incredibly anti-Semitic. which Europe always was. That's their tradition anyway, you know. What's happening in Europe? I don't know if you realize that. Europe is being destroyed, all of it. Two ways. One, immigration. The Muslims are taking over Europe. All of a sudden they can't stop. All of a sudden they are being invaded by millions of Arabs. And that is diluting the whole concept of Europe, okay? But more than that, it's going to turn Europe into an Islamic state. And more than that, Muslims don't tolerate museums because they don't like a lot of the pictures there and the statues and all that. They will destroy the culture of Europe, you see. The whole status of Europe as a free continent, whatever, the status of its culture, everything is going to be destroyed when the Muslims reach half of the population of Europe. And believe me, they're working at it. It's a work in progress, you see. And then they're really finished. Why? Why is the Muslim allowing that? It's not, again, remember, God controls the world, like I brought the two psukim in Tehillim in 127. Why? Because it's the meter connected meter, it's a measure for measure. You want to allow the Arab to invade my country, my people? Guess what? I will have the very same people that you want to invade Israel, they're going to invade your country and destroy you. What a classic measure for measure. That's what it's about, you see. What a poetry. Second idea that's destroying Europe. Europe does not have what's called a replacement population. In order for a country to remain a country, it's got to have birth, people being born. You got to have young guys, you know. If nobody's being born, what happens? Then everybody ages, right? But by the time they turn 65 or 70, there's no cash. They can't work, they're old. So they rely on the young, right? The young to supply the money. It's called Social Security, which itself is a big fraud. Because if you look in the Social Security of the United States, it's empty. But there is a piece of paper that says IOU, that the Congress owes, I don't know, like trillions of dollars. It's a joke. But anyway, it's a charade, as they say. So if you don't have young people being born, that's the end of the country. Because then everybody gets old, nobody supports them, and guess what? They all die. Eventually, right? There's nothing going on, there's no growth, there's nothing, you know. That's what's happened to Europe, you see. Europe has no replacement population, you see. And that, by the way, that's one of the ideas why Europe wanted Arabs in the first place, because they felt that the Arabs will come in and do a lot of the work that the youth used to do. That was the cheshbon. But they do not have a replacement value. And by the way, there are other countries that suffer from that also. I don't know if you realize that. Russia also doesn't have replacement. Japan, it's a big problem in Japan. They also, and China, because they forbade somebody to have more than one kid for years, you know. So everybody's aging, which is also interesting, and so on, you know. But those two concepts are destroying Europe. Mida keneged mida. You want Arabs to invade my country and destroy my people? I'm going to have the very same people invade your country and destroy you. You see? You want to wipe out my people? Guess what? I'm going to wipe out your culture, right? No replacement population. These are not accidents. These are not chance. It's hashgacha pratis. It's divine intervention. And Europe is dying in front of our, you know, in front of us. Whether it be England, this I read years ago, 1 out of every 3 kids in France is a Muslim. And it says that France will be half Muslim in like 10 years at that rate, you know, because they're not having kids and the Muslims are having dozens, right? So it's only a matter of time till Islam takes over. Mida keneged mida. But that is Europe, right? Let's check out the United States. You think it's only happening in Europe? One, why does the US have such an incredible illegal immigration problem? It's the same idea, you see. Because you want to keep talking about a 2-state solution in spite of everything that I just brought. You know what I'm going to do? You want to give Israel a immigration problem? I'm going to give you an immigration problem. And that's what it is. They have an enormous problem. They say in 50 years, right, English is not even the spoken language anymore. That the majority of Americans will be third world countries. That's what it's not even going to be English, you know. It's going to be third world countries, whether it be Hispanics or whatever, or not the Hispanic Asians coming in by the droves. It's a meter keneged meter. It's a measure for measure. You want to destroy the viability of my country, you're going to have a massive immigration problem. And it's massive. But it's more than that. You want to allow Israel to be existentially threatened by Iran, which is what Obama did. And now Trump is not really doing anything to stop it. Fine. You want to allow Israel to have what? An existential problem? Guess what? I'm going to give you an existential problem. Who's that? North Korea. It's astounding what's happened in the last 3 months. It came out of nowhere. They've been negotiating with that crazy guy, you know, Kim Jong-un. I hope I said his name correctly. You know, the guy's obviously out of his mind. You know, but it's more than that. The guy's a psychopath because he's ruthless. He killed his uncle. I mean, you can't even count the guys he killed. If you look at him the wrong way, I think somebody, I once read somebody, one of his main chief guys in the army. So this guy was speaking, you know, Kim, and this guy probably didn't have too much sleep. He fell asleep, right? Yeah. Well, what he did the next day was he gave him a permanent sleep. Killed him. For what? You talk about ruthless people, you know. So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, North Korea is threatening the United States existentially. They want to bomb, if they have, you know, they want to bomb California. I mean, fortunately, they can't do it yet. So America can still prevent it. But whoever heard of something? That a guy says, I'm going to take on America? Was he insane? Right? Why? Mida keneged mida, measure for measure. You want to know what it is, say, you want to understand what it feels like to be threatened existentially? Yeah, I'll show you. And all of a sudden, Trump and his whole administration go crazy. How do we solve the problem? Why? Why is it a problem? I'll tell you why it's a problem. Because this madman can take out Tokyo and Seoul and Seoul in one shot. He has a missile to reach Tokyo. You know, what's Tokyo have? 14 million people. And he's got a missile to reach Seoul. You know, he couldn't care less. How many million? I think there's 50 million people in, or something like that, in North Korea. He couldn't care less how many people die in North Korea. He takes them out anyway without batting an eyelash. You know what I'm saying? So what does he care? See, he'll take out Tokyo. All you need is one nuclear weapon. And he already has, they estimate, about 14. He take out Tokyo. It's incredible. I mean, what you know? What's the exchange here? You know, so everybody, they don't know what to do with this guy because if you bomb him, right? He'll send. I'm sure he's got missiles pointed at Tokyo and Seoul, South Korea. So they're in a quandary. It's very difficult to solve this problem. Yet he's existentially threatening the United States. It's amazing when you watch it. But it's literally a mida keneged mida. You want to allow Iran to keep saying what they do? The Moshe says, I'll show you. You see? Nobody sees this. Because it came out of nowhere. In fact, it came out now that who? That Trump is president. This didn't exist before. Notice? Before that, they were negotiating with the thing. Of course, the whole thing was a fraud. But all of a sudden, in the last 2 or 3 months, it really came to the fore. Why? Because it's Trump's job to deal with Iran. That's why. In fact, that's why he was elected. That's why God put him in, to deal with the existential threat of the United States.
Of Israel.
The existence of Israel. And he's not doing it. So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this comes. So that's the second einish. But here's the third einish. Punishment. The third punishment is this. Donald Trump is the greatest negotiator who ever lived, isn't he? Isn't it amazing to watch? What was his key signature platform? Obamacare. He failed. Nobody could believe that. This is incredible. Wait, it doesn't make sense. You're the greatest negotiator of mankind, right? Yet you failed to pass or negotiate, and he, believe me, spent a lot of time in Congress negotiating, right? You failed to convince Congress, right, for whatever, to abolish Obamacare. Excuse me, You're not the greatest negotiator of all. Why? Because remember what it says? If God does not build a building, then the builders build in vain. Got that? It's a pasuk in Tehillim. If God doesn't say, ois with Obamacare, I want it out, I don't care who you are, you cannot negotiate away. And God will just create ways that it stops. But you should know one thing. Not only is it a slap in the face to Donald Trump, because it shows this is your main promise and you failed. So where's your negotiating skill, right? It's a real slap in the face. But it's also a slap in the face to the Republicans. You guys have been swearing for years, right? For years. You guys couldn't even get a majority, you know? The last minute they had to call it off. You have any idea what kind of bullshit and embarrassment that is for a party? And the incredible thing how God foiled them. Because the problem is that they put out a bill without even a consensus of the Republican Party. They didn't go around and say, okay, what would you like, and then figure out what everybody would like. No, they put out the thing, and then all of a sudden they rejected it. What kind of a politician does that? Where's your intelligence about how to get a bill passed by your party? And you guys got the majority of both houses. What a busha. What an embarrassment, you see. So it's a slap in the face to Donald Trump. It's a slap in the face to Paul Ryan, just shows you what he's made out of. And it's a slap in the face to the whole Republican Party. Where's their unity? It's funny, the whole Democratic Party is unified to destroy the Republicans. But the Republicans are not unified to get the major bill passed. And now everything else. Why? Because the Moshe wants to say, you think you're the great negotiator? You want to negotiate my people, Israel, Jews? You want to make a two-state solution and destroy my people and all the other arguments I presented? I will show everybody. I will stop you from winning this Obamacare, repealing it, and then we'll see who's the boss. Yeah, look, as Jews, Torah-observant Jews, you need to look at what goes on through the eyes of the Torah. This isn't an accident. You see? Interesting. It's a very, very important concept.
How's Donald Trump, a guy, supposed to realize all this?
Oh.
I mean, some of it maybe, but there are
Yeah.
some things that came from Torah that he...
Because, it's a good question, because the answer is very obvious. Donald Trump is blinded by his ability to negotiate. You see, that's bad news. But but if he was honest, and he is an honest guy in general, you should know. We're not talking about a guy who's a liar. He's a very honest guy. He's a very good person, actually. I believe he's a very good person. He's very good-hearted. He's kind-hearted. He's done tremendous acts of chesed, of kindness to many people. I mean, some of the stuff he's done is legend, and so on, you know. So there's no question. He's really, in many ways, okay, you know, he's got his shtick, his idiosyncrasies, but then who doesn't? Everybody does, right? Just ask your wife. But anyway, everybody's got his shtick, right? Okay, that's fine, but he's an honest guy. Any honest guy would look at this entire Middle East situation and say the whole thing is insane. And how many arguments they brought down? About 11 of them? There's many more arguments. What are you doing? You know, what are you doing? And I think that Steve Bannon, who was one of his main guys, he told them, don't bother with the Arabs. In fact, for the first month, Trump didn't even answer the request of the Arabs. They were wiring the White House. No, when are we going to meet? Right? And he didn't even bother answering them. Because apparently he believed what Bannon was saying. What are you doing? These guys are frauds. Bannon understood. There's nobody sitting at the table. So what are you talking about negotiations? You see. But apparently somebody got to Trump. Bad news. And we'll talk about that. And he's being misled. Terribly misled. But he's also being punished at the same time. In any case. But he should realize just by being honest about the whole situation. Anybody who's honest sees the whole thing is crazy.
At least on some of the points. Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure. Biblical, legal, historical. There's nobody sitting at the other side. Hamas is a fraud. He's illegal. I mean, just go, Hamas. How can you make a two-state solution when Hamas is going to destroy Israel? You think they care because there's a two-state? They're going to bomb everything. You know, as it is, they're 5 miles from what? From El Al or something like that. You know, it's a joke. So what's he talking about, the guy? And what's also bad, I believe, is that he has sent religious Orthodox Jews to do the settling. That's Jared Kushner, Jason Greenblatt, these are all his team, and David Friedman, which is very bad, because a Jew that makes peace or attempts with somebody that clearly cannot make peace, that only is subterfuge to destroy the Jews, is a Moisa. You can't do that. If you know the guy really wants to kill you, it's obvious, then how do you in any way pressure Israel or even bother with this nonsense? It's a waste of time, you see. That's not good for them, those three. Because in many ways, you're not allowed to do that. If you see that the people on the other side, that it's merely some ploy to kill you, so therefore they're going to make believe and reassure you, you see? And then but really what their motive is, all the years shows what their motive is. So then how do you even sit down with these guys, you see? And these are Orthodox Jews trying to negotiate? In any case, what is the problem really? Because here's what they don't understand. There is no peace with Yishmael until the Tikkun. That's why. They don't realize that this is the end of the matter. You see, you cannot make peace with Yishmael, which is the Arabs. What does that mean? Look, in the beginning, Yishmael was very good. He's the son of Avraham Avinu. I mean, that's a murdik schus, a tremendous merit to be the son of Abraham, Avraham Avinu. You see, but what happened? Something happened in the middle. He changed his mind. He tried to kill Yitzchak. Rashi brings that down, right? Tried to kill Yitzchak, and that's when Sarah realized, wait a minute, why did he kill Yitzchak? So he can inherit. Avraham Avinu was a fabulously wealthy person, that he can inherit because he was the only other son, basically. He can inherit. So he wanted to kill Yitzchak, so that's why Sarah came in with Avram and drove him away, you see, because he wanted to kill Yitzchak. So he already reached a certain spiritual height. Look, imagine what it is to be the son of Avraham Avinu. Amazing, Imagine being the son of the Vilna Gaon, what that would mean for you, right? What a chance for Ruchnius. What a chance for spirituality. It'd be incredible. Could you imagine being the son of Avraham Avinu, right? And how you could sit down and talk to him? I mean, he's a Novi. He's everything everybody could have wished for, right? And he still changed. So he had this incredible spiritual opportunity, Yishmael. Instead, he changed, obviously, to try to kill Yitzchak. So therefore, that concept, you see, of replacing Yitzchak now becomes his drive. So he becomes a tremendous Rasha, although in the end he did tshuva, which is interesting. But really, when you think about that, and this is very interesting, Yishmael had 12 tribes. Why? Because Al Pisoid, Yishmael was part of the Tikkun process. If you realize that. And therefore he was supposed to he had 12 tribes, just like Yaakov had 12 tribes. Because he's really part of the Tikkun process. You see, he's not just a goy. He's part of the Tikkun process, just like Avraham, not like Avraham Avinu, but as part of that, you see. Instead, he took that and instead became trying to kill Yitzchak, and of course he became a Rasha, and of course he lost the whole concept of Tikkun. But the jealousy never left to take or to supplant the Jews in terms of who is the chief, even in the physical world. That never left, you see. So he also aspires to be a Masakin, which is a rectifier of creation. Remember I once said that the concept of Adam, it says in the Chazal that Atem Kriyim Adam, you are called man, but the nations of the world is not called man. What does that mean? Because the concept of Adam is a person that can do tikkun. That means all his acts can actually have influence over the spiritual worlds. That's what it means. So therefore he is called Adam. That's why Adam Rishon, even though he wasn't Jewish, was able to rectify, to masakin all the Bria. You see? So therefore, Yishmael is Adam. But the problem is when he became a Rasha, he changed from Adam to Para Adam. You see? but he still has the concept of Adam in his name because he had that ability. Then you look at Edom, which is Esav. You see, Esav also was a Masakin. In fact, he was equal to Yaakov Avinu for 15 years or 13 years till he went out to do evil. You see, and therefore he became jealous of Yaakov, and he also tried to kill the Yaakov. So he also wants to supplant Yaakov Avinu. You see, so he also became a Rasha. So he retains the concept of Adam. How? Because he used to be an Adam. He used to be a person that could rectify creation. He could influence the spiritual worlds. You see? But when he became a Rasha, he became a Rasha. Right? And where do you see that he could have done that? Because he is a Edom with a Vav. He has the name Adam with a Vav, which is Edom, and of course the Vav is the Nachash, the snake. You see? So both of them have the concepts of Adam in it, except that the distortion, either you're Para Adam or you're Edom with a Vav in it, which means that the one who controls you now is the Satan. You see? A snake is it looks like a snake, yeah. But they're both called Adam. If you take, in both, but they're both distortions of the Adam, because originally both of them could do the tikkun. You see, therefore, the way to subdue them ultimately is when the tikkun is finished, when the Mashiach comes, or when there's a messianic process, a redemption. That's the only time that the Arabs and the world, Edom, Western civilization, will make peace with the Jews. Like you see in Yeshayahu, that the wolf will dwell with the lamb and so on. So what is Trump trying to do? He's trying to make peace with people that are still in their hostile state. So then what is he talking about? You can't make peace. You could try to make a truce and so on. But as long as they are hostile to the Jews, you cannot do it. And that's his mistake. And you could see they're hostile by looking at all of these ideas. All the ideas, and that's only some of the ideas. You can see it. Any honest person could take a look and say, this is ridiculous. You see. That's why neither Trump or anybody else can really make peace. What he has to do is reject the Arab claim and tell Israel, do what you have to do to become an incredible nation. That's what he has to tell, you see. Now, the truth is also that it's not just Yishmael and Edom that are the enemies of the Jews. No. They themselves are agents of the Satan. That's the enemy. And the Satan can only end, and I remember what I told you a long time ago, 98% of the holiness, the Kedusha of the Satan that he eats and survives is now back in the hands of the Jews. So he is dying, you see. So therefore, as long as he's alive, which he is, then Yishmael and Edom will always be enemies of the Jews. You can always try to negotiate in terms of a truce or whatever, or try to what's called mollify, soften their stance. But the real peace only comes ultimately when the Mashiach comes in the messianic process in the end. It says in the Navi. That's what it means. So therefore, right now, it's not a matter of making peace, it's a matter of being honest. It's about being honest, and it's about being appropriate, what you really can do. So then what in the world are these guys doing? You see, because according to the Hashkafa, these are the enemies ultimately of the Jewish people, just like they were enemies thousands of years ago. And the only way to subdue them, you see, is when the Geula will be very close. You can try, that's true, but you can never be fooled. You have to be honest in terms of who they are, you see. So when you think about that, unfortunately to me it looks like that Trump, who I believe is, like I say, he's the Messiah of Edom, to change Edom and turn it around for the Jewish sake, and I believe a lot of it, he is that, but I believe he's been captured by the Satan, because the Satan has now taken him and put him on the side of Yishmael in some way to endanger the Jewish people. Now, in the end, I don't think he will do that. I think he will wake up and realize and say, wait a minute, this is ridiculous, because that's what's going to happen. Look, all of those guys, Kushner, Greenblatt and Friedman, they'll all fail ultimately, especially Kushner and Greenblatt. And he's going to actually, they're going to come out looking like a bunch of fools. That's what's going to happen. You know? So ultimately, I believe in the end he will wake up in that sense. But really, honestly, Trump needs a spiritual advisor. He really does. Because why do I say that? Because already God is punishing him. Obamacare, the failure, is an oynish, makes him look terrible. North Korea is an oynish. The illegal immigration problem, and there's a lot of backlash to that, is an oynish. All of it is an oynish. These things just don't, an oynish means a punishment. These things just don't happen. They're warnings. That's what they are. We don't even know how bad it can get, you see. Because it's very possible that Trump will make war on North Korea. In fact, he has to. He has no choice. Because it's an existential threat, you see. And that's a terrible punishment to America. If they have to go to war, because you never know what that guy's going to do. That guy can take out Tokyo. I mean, it's horrifying even to think of what that crazy madman in North Korea is going to do. But if he, but if he stops in time, then I believe that problem would be solved. Because it's going to get worse as he gets tougher with Israel and subjects Israel to some insane negotiations. I mean, you take a look at it. You see what's happening. You see. And when you think about this, how can you compare? Not only is he endangering Israel if he has a two-state solution, there's something else. Israel is one of the most advanced nations in the world. They are world leaders in agriculture, water conservation, cybersecurity, computers, medicine. It's incredible what these guys, and there are only 8 million Jews. It's hard to believe. How can a nation, Israel is less than 1/4% of the world's population. So how could they be world leaders in so many different ways? So what do you want to destroy them? What do you want? You want the Arabs? What have they done in the last 500 years? Nothing. It's not even a contest here. What they contribute to civilization and what they contribute to civilization. What the Arabs contribute to civilization is war, destruction, mayhem, murder, right? And Israel, what they contribute, what an advanced civilization that contributes to the advancement of life and civilization. Like, as I say in Hebrew, what's the Havamina? How can you even contemplate the difference and weaken Israel? And not only that, so maybe Trump or anybody could have said, well, we need their oil. What oil? Why do you think God making America an independent oil nation with hydraulic fracking, right? Where they can now take oil out of the ground, which they couldn't do before, the oil that was embedded in the rocks. If you know what fracking is. Not only that, he's releasing more land. Obama forbade. I love that guy, Obama. I mean, this guy's like he's the cherry on the cake. He forbade, or he made federal lands 250 million acres. Means you couldn't develop 250 million acres. Do you believe this? Do you have any idea how much 250 million acres is? I can tell you one thing, it's a lot larger than Lakewood. Okay? And he prohibited development of those, he made them federal lands. So you couldn't drill for oil, you couldn't do anything. Okay? This week, Trump was Mavatal, canceled the whole Xera. With one executive order, he just threw the whole thing out. So now he just increased 250 million acres for development. You see, and off the North Shore, it's astounding what the guy's doing. You see? So America is oil independent. It's one of the greatest exporters of oil. It doesn't need anybody else. So what's America going to say? Well, we need the oil, so we got to be good to the Arabs because they're giving us oil. What giving us oil? You don't need them anymore. What excuse? How can you weaken an advanced civilization, right? And compare that and endanger that civilization, Israel, to a civilization that hasn't contributed anything in the last 500, 600, 700 years. Well, like, are you insane? Just for the benefit of civilization, how do you do this? You see. Anyway, this is what's happening since I left. Anyway, so I thought I have to bring everybody up to speed because there's tremendous things going on. You don't realize the concept of North Korea, the concept of the failure of Trump to put through legislation. This is not simple. Thank God the Russian had Rahmanis. He had mercy on Trump, and he allowed him to put in Gorsuch, who's a good guy, I hope. Neil Gorsuch was a tremendous conservative. Why? Because God didn't want to destroy America. Because had Gorsuch been rejected, like that crazy Chuck Schumer wanted to reject him out of hand politically. He knew that Gorsuch is a great guy, but that means that the Supreme Court would have a majority of liberals, and that would have destroyed America. You're looking at the incredible compassion that God has for America. That's why he let that happen right away. He didn't stand in the way, you see? But in the other things, God is not allowing him to do it. And he needs to understand Trump. I hope he wakes up. Remember the Pasuk in Tehillim. If God doesn't build the building, then the builders build in vain. 127 in Psalms in Tehillim. And if God doesn't watch a city, then the watchmen, even if they watch diligently, they watch in vain. You see? And I don't care who the builders or the watchman is. It's the Rebbeinu Shem that runs everything. And the only real time, and the enemy right now is not Yishmael and Edom, which are the Arabs and the Europeans and all that. It is the Satan that's the enemy. Because these are merely agents of the Satan. And the only real time true peace can come is when you talk about the beginning of the end of the messianic process. We're very close and so on. But right now you have to be honest and look at what's real and understand what's at stake. And I hope that Donald Trump, and I respect him greatly. I think he's a great guy, notwithstanding what I said. I think he's very honest. I think he's very kind. I think he's got his act together to a certain extent, but he's making a fundamental mistake. And I'm worried that as he continues making that mistake, then God is going to exercise more restraint, which he can easily do. And it would be interesting to see that Trump is not going to get anything passed in the Congress, because that's what he's doing. He's destroying his reputation as a great negotiator, you see. It's very important, see. So anyway, I hope he gets the message, whatever, and that he gets back into what he's supposed to do, and that is to allow Israel to grow, because Israel has to grow, to allow Israel to build the settlements, because they need to build the settlements, because all the Jews are going to come back from France and from England. As it gets worse and worse in Europe, you're going to have an enormous influx of Jews, you see, and therefore you need a lot of different buildings being built, territories, and new apartments and all that, and Israel has to really do this. So I hope that this happens. Yeah, I wanted to add something which is very important, and this year, of course, is entitled "The Second Mistake of Donald Trump," which he's really being punished. I wanted to add, already you see a very important thing which Trump has to do, which he's doing. He's not a failure, he's just doing things wrong, some of it. But one thing he did which I consider incredibly admirable, okay? Because in the end of time, what the Rebbeinu Shem wants is the world has to realize the concept of accountability. Under Obama, everything went. He couldn't care less. And all he, of course, he didn't want anybody to interfere with his golf game, which is obviously what he was doing. God forbid you interfere with Obama's golf. I mean, just the man was incredible. But in any case, the main idea is that Trump, two things. He bombed Syria, you see? And not only did he bomb Syria, want to close the door? Oh, he bombed Syria, for what? Because he killed kids. Okay, I mean, that's what really would turn them on. I mean, the fact that he did it was very good, because what he did is he put a certain realization in the world that Trump is not Obama. And that's part of his mission, the concept of accountability. You see, he has to straighten out the world, that they have to realize that this is not a Hefka world. This is not a world which is abandoned to anybody that wants to do it. So the world now realizes that, wait a minute, we now have to deal with a president that's going to take serious foreign things happening that are unethical and immoral. And then when he bombed Afghanistan, that was even great, you see, and so on. But the main idea is that this is part of his messianic, part of the messianic process, of which I believe he has to do. His idea is not just to change America, but he has to change the world, and America is powerful enough to do that. And one of the main ways of changing the world is the concept of, hey, there's a new sheriff in town. You see, there's a new cop on the block. You see, and there's a concept of accountability. It's no longer what it was under Obama, where anybody can do whatever he wants. You know what they say, when the cat's away, the mice will play? Well, guess what? The cat's back. And the mice, they all ran back into their hole. You see, which is very admirable, and I hold what he did was tremendous. You see, and because what America has to realize is that, and God is going to have tremendous tarumas, how do you say tarumas? Claims against America. Why? Because there are many people that say, well, what do you care what's going on in Afghanistan or Syria? You know, wrong. Because it's true, you don't want to get involved totally into them, but if America has the ability to stop that type of incredible injustice, you don't realize that they must stop it, because they have the ability, they have the power, therefore they must stop it. They cannot say, well, isolationism, you know, well, what do you want from us, you know? We're just worried about our own country and everybody else can do whatever they want. No. America has to understand that they are, in a certain sense, the cop on the block. They don't realize that. Why? Because they have the power to do it. And if you have the power to stop that type of injustice and murder and destruction, in a certain sense, you have to stop it. You don't have to get, of course, there's a limit to that. You know, you have to stop it. And I'll tell you one story. There was once Rabbi Kotler, you know, so he wanted to send a bunch of guys. Well, you see that, Rabbi, it's in Lakewood, Rabbi Kotler. So they wanted to open a yeshiva in some place in America, you know. So, you know, the yeshiva called up Lakewood and said, maybe send us a couple of guys for the first ban. A couple of guys will be students for, you know, the first, semester, whatever, right? So Rabbi picked a couple of guys. So he picked one guy who today's a Rosh Yeshiva, you know. He picked him to be one of the guys to go to this place, right? So the guy, he didn't want to go. He had his chavrusas all set up. He had everything set up. He didn't want to go now to Yehopitz, which was certainly Yehopitz in those years, you know. So the guy said to Rabban, he says, wait a minute, you know, I got everything set up. Don't do this to me, in a certain sense. I mean, he spoke with covered honor and so on, you know. So he asked Rabban Kotler, he said, why do I have to go? You know, why not somebody else? You know? So Rabban said to him, a tremendously profound concept. And he answered him, why you have to go? I'll say it in Yiddish, then I'll translate it. You must go, weil ihr kennt, because you can do it. You can do the job. You go out, you're very good in Kiriv or whatever. You can do the job, therefore you must go. Other guys, they can't do the job, so I'm not going to send them. In other words, if you are able to do something and you don't, you are held accountable. And you can't say, well, why me? Send somebody else. You see? It's a profound comment. That's what I say. You must get involved at a certain level. Not totally, obviously. Has to be measured. You must get involved in holding the world accountable and stopping the incredible destruction that is going on in this world. Why? Why do we have to do it? Because you can. That's what Trump did. So what they say in English, kudos to Trump. Because he did it. Because America is a blessed country that was given the power, enormous arsenal and military might. They can do it, so they have to do it in a certain sense. Of course, it has to be measured. I can go into the country and so on. But what Trump did was 100% correct. Because America has a moral responsibility. In fact, they have a divine responsibility, like I told you, you know. They can stop it, you have to do it, and he did. And now they're all thinking 15 times. I mean, imagine he did it to Russia, because Russia had planes on that air base. You should know. And he didn't tell Putin, he warned Putin, Trump. He said, by the way, he told him, he didn't ask him permission. He said, by the way, I'm taking out this air base. I give you 1 hour to get your planes off. He's talking to Russia here, right? So what do you think Putin did? He got his planes off, you know? But that told Putin something, you know? Don't mess around with America. You know what I'm saying? Don't do that, because he didn't ask him permission. He told him. That's a very important statement. The world now knows there's a new sheriff on the block, which is very important, because a lot of people will rein in their dictatorship, their terrible tyranny. What they could do with Obama, it was like a sale. You could do whatever you want. You know, and so on. With Trump, it's different, and people realize that. Therefore, why I'm saying this is because that is part of the responsibility of an individual that I believe is a messianic figure of Edom. He's the Edomite messianic figure, and part of that idea, and that's why America is blessed with such incredible military might to do that. So kudos to Trump for that. But he's messing around with the major mission that he has to do, and that is to allow Israel to grow and to become whatever they can be. And he has to stop the Arabs from doing what they can do. I just hope he wakes up in time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next week, you get back to Derech Hashem.